Okay, welcome to Scrollin' episode 133. I'm Ket. Joining me, of course, my good friend, Davis Starjumper. How you doing, man?
Honored to be here. That's what I'm going to go with on this episode. Honored to be
Honored to be here. Wow. Well, it's an honor to have you here, sir. It'll be a weird one. We're going to have a weird conversation here, but we're going to get through it and we're going to be okay. So, things are changing on the Scrollin' podcast. This is episode number 133. And really, I've never really said this before, but I always kind of mentally subtract the number 10 from whatever episode we're on, because those first 10 episodes, I mean, I always tell people just start on number 11. Okay. That's when the show really started. That's when we kind of really found our stride and kind of had an idea of what we wanted to do with this thing. Those first 10 episodes was just me by myself, sort of experimenting. Every episode was like totally different format, So anyway, episode number 11, Davius Starjumper joined up along with our friends Icy and Grimsforge. Shout out to those guys. They stuck around for a couple of episodes, and then we decided, you know what, actually, I think the magic formula is really just you and me, Davius Starjumper, Ket Sparrowhawk. This is kind of where it's at, and this is how it started in the first place, right? Just lunch breaks, talking about ESO at work all the time.
Lunch break chats, those lunch break chats, for sure.
Yeah, and so it just kind of clicked for us, like, okay, yeah, the 4-man thing was fun, but it was just like a little bit too much work for me, and plus I felt like, I don't know, the real kind of sauce was you and me, old friends, playing this game together. That's really where it was at. So yeah, 123 episodes, give or take. It's been awesome, dude. It's been so amazing.
It has been a awesome ride.
So, I mean, I feel like, I don't know, this is all sort of foreshadowing. People are probably guessing what's coming up. But Davis, why don't you fill us in? Why am I even bringing this up? What's going on, man?
So, I have reached a point. Me and you have had some good talks and good conversation, but it is that time that I am stepping away from Scrollin' Podcast, and just kind of some explanations. I have 3 kiddos. My oldest just got into high school, joined the football team. My middle child just joined school band in middle school.
Ooh, what instrument?
He's starting with trumpet.
Oh, okay, nice.
But he's on wait for percussion, which I told him, everybody's holding out for the drums.
That was exactly my path.
Really?
I seriously was. I started trumpet and switched to percussion later.
I will keep you updated with the journey. But he's excited.
Sorry to interrupt.
No. That's good. I didn't know that. That's awesome. And then my littlest one is in kindergarten. So there's a whole lot of variables with that. I myself have gone back to school to get a degree, and then my work is increasing my travel quite rapidly. They're sending me all over the place, all over the country. And I will say that I do have a pretty awesome wife who I do want to hang out with every now and then as well. Sure. And so it just kind of came to that realization that trying to juggle a lot of things right now. This week was like the perfect example of it. We had the first football scrimmage that was an hour and a half away, football practices every night. The middle child with the band broke his foot this week. And then the littlest one won student of the week up at the school. So we're up at the school for that. So it's this massive, and then the back to school homework all tied into that, and then looming work trip. So it was kind of that good example of just,
and you got to mow the lawn, and
still got
regular life stuff.
Yes, and so it was just kind of that realization. I'm probably juggling too much right now, and I got to step back on some things to take it. But I will say, like, I would not change a thing about being on the podcast. It has been such a awesome part of my life, like just amazing. Like, we joke about this all the time, like it's made me better professionally. Like I think, I say my work's sending me more to travel across the country. Part of that piece of my job is for me to get up and speak and give presentations to massive groups of people, and like I credit the podcast for a lot of that. Like we joke a lot about how professionally how much better we have become in speaking and talking, and how more comfortable it makes you as I get
Yeah,
through this
certainly.
all choppy and not doing well at the moment. But it's been so awesome to be a part of it and to be along for the ride. And thank you for making this thing. Truly, thank you for making it, this Discord community, and just letting me be along for the ride. Truly been a special experience, and I'm going to go back to honored. That's very honored to be a part of it.
It's been awesome, man. Want to buy my dog? Thanks for joining us, dude, in the chat. Yeah, it's been awesome, and I love how just organic and natural it is. We're just like friends who work together. Like this game was on sale on Steam one day, and I was like, I guess I'll check this out. I like open world fantasy games, and I was into it for a month or so, and then I was like pestering you daily, like, dude, I'm pretty sure you're gonna love this game. You need to play it. We can play it together. Game. It'll be awesome.
That's so true.
And I've kind of hashed it out a few times before, but I didn't even really know what an MMO was. I didn't have any concept of like having a build in a video game. Like this is all entirely new territory for me, and we're all just kind of learning this stuff together. And here we are on this show now. Like it's been such a journey.
Episode 133. And it's crazy too. I look back. I'm a nostalgic type person, so I look back and think to, some of those early launch discussions were, some vet dungeon that me and you, we just couldn't figure out. We were those low level players that, man, this one's a tricky one. How do we do this boss? Just
I remember thinking that all tanks were jerks. Like, what is it about tanks being jerks all the time? They're always angry.
Why do they hate us so much?
And now I understand, like, because I had 0 DPS, and they're tired of this happening to them all the time.
Just carrying the load, carrying us through dungeons. Oh man,
so funny.
Good times.
But yeah, man, whatever success this show has had, you've been in at least 50% of that, and it won't be the same without you. I know people are going to miss having you around. And, I hope now that you don't have this obligation of the podcast, that you can maybe have a bit more casual relationship with ESO. And maybe when you actually do have time, you can sit down and actually enjoy some playtime. Jump in, play some BGs with us, and that sort of thing without feeling like this is something I have to do for the show.
Absolutely. I promise I'm not dying. There's no, I'm not dying. I will still be in the Discord. I will still have this game, still have the characters, still repping the Nords. No worries. But yes, just getting life things in order a little bit. But yeah, people will still see me around. No worries.
Yeah, for sure. He'll still be in the Discord and all that stuff. So the plan for the Scrolling Podcast going forward, and this is actually something I've been thinking about for a while, even, with you around, thinking like, okay, maybe we can have a third spot that's just a constant rotating guest. Like every episode is a different guest that we have on, and it'd be the three of us. So I'm thinking I'll just do that. It's just you won't be here. It'll just be me and a rotating guest. I already have the next 4 episodes. I have guests lined up for those. Want to buy my dog in the chat? He's going to be the first one.
Awesome.
So that's going to be fun. Yeah, always a good time.
Yeah.
Certain to be entertaining. Also a very knowledgeable, very, very skilled player.
And top tier entertainment with dog. Just top tier entertainer right there.
No pressure, dog. You better be funny. So yeah, we got Want to Buy My Dog. Ironworks is going to be a guest. Constein, our good friend Maddie Quinn. Uncle Sam has agreed to be on from time to time. Starjumper, you might even be a guest once in a while.
I may pop back in every now and then. You never know.
Yep, never know. So yeah, Scrolling Podcast isn't going anywhere. We're just going to try that for a while, and I may end up experimenting with some other things, but I think it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I guess that's enough of that. All right.
Let's talk some ESO here.
Enough feelings.
There's a little too much feelings already. Jeez.
So why don't we talk about what's going on in the gold vendor this weekend? So we have some necklaces, Dark Strider, Prisoner's Rags, Sheer Venom, Investments of the Warlock, And the monster helms are Infernal Guardian and Stormfist.
I feel like there's one that stands above the rest there.
Sheer Venom, right?
100% yes to Sheer Venom.
Yeah.
That's a great set.
It's a great set, a very popular proc set. You want to use that with Poison Injection since that counts as an execute ability, and it's a dot, so every tick kind of keeps it refreshed on cooldown very, very easily. And it's a very strong proc, and it itself is an execute. As they lose health, it does more and more damage. Super popular for Nightblades, just spamming Poison Injection at everyone. Just use that and Wave Fire. Poison Injection keeps them both procced on cooldown. It's a very popular like 1-bar setup.
I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I when I saw that golden, I was thinking of the Sheer Venom, exactly what you said, Sheer Venom, Poison Injection, but on a DK with this new DK class set.
And using Poison Injection to proc it, or
yeah, still using Poison Injection.
DKs get I think 5% extra poison damage.
Yep.
Could be good. So that's really the only one like really worth looking at. Another interesting one though is Prisoner's Rags. It reduces your sprint cost by 50%, and it gives you like 1,000 something magicka per second while sprinting. So you could pair that with Stormweaver's Cavort so that your sprints now cost magicka, and this is giving you like 3 times as much magicka as you're consuming while you're sprinting. This is an interesting idea.
Infinite sprint.
Yeah, infinite sprint. Like you're gaining magicka while sprinting instead of draining it.
Somebody's got to throw that together to see what that sustain. What does that look like sustain wise? I need to know.
Yeah, someone gave me that idea at some point in the past. I can't remember who it was, but I can't think of how that would actually be like a useful thing. It's like a neat idea, like okay, that works cool, but it's not really giving me more damage. It's not really giving me more sustain. Like I have to sprint to get it, so it's not like a passive thing. It doesn't seem like maybe it's very useful, but it's just a neat idea that they interact that way.
Yeah. The only way I could think to try to make it like useful would be on a Sork, like maybe back bar that set. And so your back bar has that set up, and then you could maybe like dark deal, like, I don't know. You somehow have to use dark deal to where you could maybe that somehow could lead to like an infinite sustain situation for a back bar on a Sork. That's the only way I could feasibly see that being a setup.
Yeah, and you're like kind of jumping through hoops for it, whereas you could just slap Wretched Vitality back there and be good.
You're like, hey, you said back bar. There's one spot for that back bar.
it's Wretched or Rally. Take your pick. Those are the two.
That's good stuff.
So anyway, that's the golden. So anyway, let's move on and let's just talk about the patch. So update 43, it's here. We've had a week of it so far, and it's been pretty good. I've actually really enjoyed it. It seems like the PvP community is pretty active. Like the queue pops are fast. There's a lot of people playing. It's like the Discord is very populated every single night. People in voice chat and all that stuff.
Rumor has it you haven't left the home tours. You've been in them the week straight.
Yeah. So okay, let's just do a quick rundown of the feature list here that we've gotten with this patch, just so we kind of know where we stand. And yeah, it's funny because the kind of the marquee feature of this patch is the home tours thing, which I actually forgot all about until I started making this list here. That was like the thing that they were like touting, like, okay, it's a housing update. And I really think that I'm not really plugged into the housing community, but I wouldn't think that they're super stoked on this. There's not really anything new for them to do here, but it actually is a pretty good PvP update with all the balance changes and stuff. So yeah, feature roundup. We got the home tours where you can just go look at random people's houses with the group finder. They've made some updates to Infinite Archive, so there's some new rooms, new bosses, new verses and visions, some new, like a new NPC that gives you repeatable quests, that kind of stuff. All new class sets. I won't go through the whole list again. We've talked about them in a previous episode, but kind of the hot thing of this patch, surprisingly, is that Dragon Knight set, Pyrebrand.
Oh yeah.
No one was really talking about that at all over PTS, but now that it's live, like seems like in particular the dueling community has figured out, like, wait a minute, this set's pretty
Hold on a second.
Yeah, it's really, really strong. So if you remember, it makes your light attacks apply like a 6-second dot to your target, and then you can always do a heavy attack to do like this AoE explosion that does like execute damage. So it's kind of like Way of Fire and the Vatishran two-hander combined into one effect, except it's like two Way of Fires basically. So like Way of Fire, it has a 2-second cooldown, right? So it ticks every 2 seconds. This does that too. Like when you put that 6-second dot on someone, it ticks every 2 seconds, but there's no cooldown on its application, and it ticks on application every single time. So as long as you're light attack weaving, it's ticking every 1 second because you're getting that application every single time. So it's essentially like having two Way of Fires on somebody, basically.
Hmm.
Plus you have that AoE smash that has the really good execute damage. It's a really great 2-in-1 set. And even if you don't do the heavy attack thing, the pressure is kind of outrageous. It's kind of single-handedly lifting DKs up.
I'm all for it. I'm here. I'm here all for the DKs. Let us crawl out of the cracks, DKs. Here we come.
I like how Doug says, I don't know what you're talking about, right after he said, I know everything.
I know everything. I don't know what you were talking about.
Yeah, I want to buy my dog, normally a Nightblade main, but he's been maining a DK this past week. He got a hold of that new set. He's ripping it up with that thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really good. All the DKs are getting this thing. It really is kind of I don't really like that this is the case, but it sort of is a necessary, like if you want to be competitive, especially as a solo, like a solo battlegrounds kind of DK, I kind of feel like you need it. The new Warden proc set, I've seen quite a bit of it as well. Seems pretty good. I need to farm that one. I've actually seen the Necro set a fair amount as well. I haven't really been like harmed by it all that much, but I do see people using it.
I like people.
It.
I like people that they're at least testing it. It's out there in the wild.
Yeah, it's out there. I think people are just kind of testing Necro in general, and then there's this new set, so may as well throw that into the mix.
Yep, that makes sense.
Got the set curation editions. So, like, if you go to the Undaunted vendors, there's these new coffers that cost 8 keys, guaranteed to give you a curated piece that you haven't collected yet. That's pretty cool. Combat and balance changes. So we've already talked about all these, so I'm just going to kind of get through it quickly. But the Arcanist Flail, the stamina tentacle, no longer has execute scaling. The Tentacular Dread morph, the other morph, deals more damage per crux spent. It's like 33% now rather than 20%. Haven't really seen people using that, but it's there. Necro got a bunch of stuff. The Boneyard ability now has minor vulnerability as part of it. The Unnerving morph applies that vulnerability and the breach that it has for 4 seconds. So even when they leave the area, they'll still have that on them. Gravelord's Sacrifice, the self blast bones thing, no longer requires you to be in combat, which is really nice. The Damage Tether gives you your major crit buff. The Skeletal Mage gives you your major damage buff. Happy day. Reasons to slot class abilities. That's
There
great.
we go. Here we go.
Here we go. All right. The armor buff, the class armor buff now gives you minor resolve, which is no big deal if you're using resolving vigor, but hey, it gives you the option to not use resolving vigor. Pretty nice. The totem now has major cowardice, applies that to enemies, and the intensive mender now heals in an AoE. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on for Necromancer there. I don't think these things really help them out as far as their standings among other classes. There still really isn't anything that they bring to the table. You don't really have a reason to play a Necromancer other than just aesthetics, whereas other classes there is like a reason why you might want to bring them. So I think we still need some work on the Necromancer, but this is some really nice quality of life stuff, and you can at least kind of have your class identity and have the buff coverage that you need and all that.
Going in the right direction.
Yeah, they certainly are. I hope they're not finished. Nightblades, they basically just had some abilities rearranged so that different passives apply to different active abilities now. But one big thing, though, is that the Shadow Barrier passive, the one that gives you your major resolve, now has a minimum of 12 seconds, which is really nice. I think it's like 6 seconds minimum right now. So, Sorcerer Haunting Curse now hits in an AoE. So I've actually been playing with this a little bit. You can use Haunting Curse. Mage's Wrath hits in an AoE as well. They have that Shattering Spines. That's another kind of like AoE delayed burst. And then I'm using the Class Mastery script on my Spammable, which also hits in an AoE. So you can have like this really nice little bomb situation without necessarily really building for it all that much. It's just kind of part of the normal toolkit. Wardens have the weird Arctic blast thing now where it deals damage or it heals if there's no enemies around. Pretty silly, I think, but it's there. The piercing cold passive no longer increases your damage done by 12% when you have a frost staff. You no longer are required to equip a frost staff on a warden, although a lot of wardens still are.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, now you get when you deal frost damage, you either get an extra 8% damage done if you have less than 30k health, which that's nobody in PvP, or you get 12% extra block mitigation if you have more than 30k health. So that's the one that PvPers are actually going to have.
Mm-hmm.
But with a frost staff, you get a lot of extra block mitigation with the frost staff also. So I mean, if you want to be really really tanky, then there you go.
There you
go. For a class it's already really
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like warden tanky, you want to be more tanky? It's okay.
Yeah, I wish we've said it in previous episodes, but if they would bump that HP threshold up to like 35k,
35 would
a lot
be the
easier.
Sweet spot. 35
would
be the perfect spot.
Then you could actually decide which way you want to go with it. Templar and DK didn't really get anything this patch of note. Mage's Guild, the structured entropy ability apparently no longer removes people from stealth, although I've heard reports of people saying that it actually does. But the patch notes say that it doesn't. So
that's what the patch notes say.
Go with that. Yeah. And the big one, the Vampire Undeath passive, it reduces damage taken by a maximum of 15% based on your missing health. And it still requires stage 3. So it's basically just a 50% nerf to that Undeath passive. So, I mean, pretty much everyone's unanimous on that. That was a good change. I did a poll on Discord of just asking people if they're still using this passive or not. 65% said no, 35% said yes.
That's perfect. I felt like that poll was perfect numbers for what the ability should be. Because previously, it was probably like 95% to 5% of people using it.
Yeah, and of the ones that said yes, some of the people sort of elaborated a little bit, and it was really like, well, on these specific tunes I'm using it for these specific reasons. And some of them were like, well, I want to use mist form, so I figure if I'm already a vampire I may as well be stage 3, and it's kind of like one of the reasons rather than just the reason now for those people,
which is perfect. That's exactly what it should be.
Yeah, it's perfect. Under scribing, basically all grimoires have been buffed. They've all just been made a bit more powerful, just slightly. I think just about all grimoires can have frost damage now. It seems like most, if not all of them. They can all have your major damage buff or your major crit buff applied to them, every grimoire. It's really nice. And really a lot of scribing related things, but those are kind of the big ones to me. Also for Cyrodiil and Imperial City, the no CP campaigns are now proc enabled. So it's the same kind of like build rules as we have in Battlegrounds. I haven't even checked that out yet, but I plan to maybe this weekend actually.
That's a fantastic change. I think that the no CP, you're going to start seeing some pretty good numbers in there now.
It'll be so great to just be like, I'll just be able to take old Betsy just as she is right now and jump right in there. My build is like optimized perfectly.
You can hang, if you've got the right group together, you can hang out in there while you're waiting for the BG queue.
Yeah. It's like, it always kind of bugs me if I want to jump into Cyrodiil because I really got to change my build around a little bit. It's like, well, I'm going to have too much sustain for a CP environment and probably not going to have enough damage to get through other people's defensive CP. So I probably need to, make a bunch of changes to compensate for that stuff. But yeah, this way I can just jump in as I am and everything's good. So best thing of the patch, what do you think? That Undeath passive change?
Yeah, I think it has to be the Undeath. It's a close second with and I know this is basically the patch, but the Imperial Archive sets. Like I've been thoroughly impressed with how quickly people have farmed those and how much we're seeing after just 1 week. Like I didn't expect to see that many of those that quickly, I guess is my surprise on that.
Yeah, people farm that DK set real fast.
Yeah, like it was like day 2, by day 2, it was like you were seeing DKs all over the place with that thing.
Wanna buy my dog says housing tours, dream come true. Okay, that's the number one.
I knew he's been checking out all those homes.
It's so funny that I straight up forgot that that was even
Mhm.
part of this thing when it was supposed to be the main thing.
That's the headline. It's the home tours patch.
I already said it, I know, but it's also just surprising to me how popular this patch has been among the PvP crowd when it doesn't really seem like it was necessarily aimed at them.
Yeah. It's gonna be real interesting that this patch, like you just said, has been so popular with the PvP crowd. With the next patch being PvP focused, it seems like everybody's gathering for the PvP patch.
That's true, and there's been some leaks, related to the Q4 PvP update. It's actually looking like it might be a pretty promising situation coming up.
Hmm, hmm.
I don't like to discuss leaks or anything that's not like official communication, but there's some stuff.
There's some
I'm
things.
just saying, some perhaps battleground related things happening. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say.
Don't you say no more. Don't you? Don't you dare. But yeah, I think going back to that question, I think that the undeath passive has to be it because you're seeing people die in BGs, which is really what BGs are for. That's always a good thing.
That's true.
Anytime there's ever a defensive nerf, that's every time that we've seen that, it's always equaled out to a positive for the BG feel, just for how BGs feel.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that seems to be the consensus. Like people are queuing up a lot. I think that's a lot of why the BGs have been so active and the queue times are so short and everything is like everyone's kind of feeling that, like this is some fun PvP here. We're like having a good time. People are actually dying. I actually have to try to keep myself alive a little bit. Yeah, it's nice. So I'm going to try a little topic here. I'm going to call it ha, 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 staying alive.
And what's that from? If you could, no, I'm just kidding.
I just thought it was funny.
Oh, sure, yeah, it just came to you. You don't even know. It just in the night popped in your head.
This started as a Discord conversation a week or so ago. Shout out to FK. We were talking about this this undeath nerf, and he was talking about how survivability is a little bit more difficult lately, and he was thinking about equipping a defensive set to compensate for that and help him, stay alive. So we had a little bit of a conversation about that. A few different people were chiming in, and really the consensus among the people talking there was that, oftentimes equipping a defensive set kind of has the opposite of the intended effect. You actually have less survivability rather than more. And a lot of times what you're really doing is just kind of delaying the inevitable rather than really solving a survivability problem. And I think in a PvP build, really the main two things that you really have to have are sustain and damage. And like there's a certain baseline of defensive stats that you need to have, but beyond that, it's really just kind of on you to push the buttons right to keep yourself alive. So let me just kind of run down this baseline, at least what I have in my mind of like for my builds, if I have at least these things covered, I know that I'm tanky enough, So you want to have a minimum of 35k health. You could have some of my builds have a little bit more or a little bit less, but if you shoot for that, you're going to be pretty good. You need to have major and minor resolve in your build. These days, that's just both resolves are pretty much mandatory. So, if you use Resolving Vigor and your class armor buff, that's covered there.
Yep.
Resolving Vigor and a burst heal or a damage shield required for every build.
Yep.
And more for me, I wouldn't necessarily say this is required, but super close to required, having major evasion and some kind of snare removal in your build. So, like Shuffle does both of those things. It's really great. The Nightblade elude bubble. You have Blade Cloak that gives you evasion. You have Race Against Time that gives you snare removal. The DK Flappy Wings. The Warden Flappy Wings.
Yep.
Just shoot for those kinds of abilities. Get them into your build somehow. They're so very useful. So that's kind of your baseline of survivability. But beyond that, like beyond having like a minimum amount of health, making sure I have major and minor resolve, I'm really not paying super close attention to my resistance stats personally. I know some people do, but I kind of make sure I have that basic buff coverage. and then I'm worried about sustain and damage
Yeah.
beyond that. That's how I'm going to be keeping myself alive. And I'll talk more about that here in just a second. But so once you have that baseline covered, once you're actually like actively in combat, you need to prioritize keeping your buffs active, and really only the long buffs, only things that last like 10 seconds or longer. Anything shorter than that, I kind of just use as needed. But anything with a long duration, 100% prioritize keeping those things active before you ever try to attack anybody or anything else. And as the fight goes on, you still have to be prioritizing, like making sure you stop, rebuff when it's time to, and then get back to fighting. Super duper important that you always do that. So when it comes to when I say that sustain and damage are so very important, sustain, I think, is kind of obvious. That's just allowing you to take action, right? You're going to be able to dodge and block and break free and cast heals and do that kind of stuff if you have good sustain. And so that's why like Wretched Vitality is such a great set, because it gives you so much. It's giving you a lot of sustain, which allows you to invest in damage. So it's giving you damage. But because it's giving you so much sustain, it's also giving you survivability, because it's giving you that option to take all those actions and do all that stuff. So if you consider Wretched a defensive set, then I would say sure, go ahead, wear that one. But for the most part, you kind of want to be shooting for sustain and damage. And the reason for damage is, it may seem counterintuitive, but having a threatening offense is super important for keeping yourself alive.
100%, yes.
Yeah, if you're just tanky and don't really have damage, you're not really making me have to worry about my own safety. I'm going to figure that out in like 3 seconds, and then I know, like, okay, we can just trade hits and I'm going to win. And I'm not even going to stop to think for a second about healing myself or anything like that. I'm just going to go full throttle. You're just a target dummy to me right now. And your resources are definitely going to run out eventually. So you need to be able to do damage to me. You need to be able to hurt me and make me like, whoa, okay, crap, I got to stop, I got to dodge, I got to block, I got to cast some heals, I got to stop damaging you for a minute so that I can pay attention to keeping myself alive. And that's keeping the pressure off of you. You're having a much easier time now. And offensive abilities are way cheaper, way lower costing than defensive abilities. So it's like a offense as defense is a very efficient way of keeping yourself alive. 100%. And you just kind of have to be bold, and just really throw that damage at them, and have some teeth on you.
Yeah, and that's the key. Exactly what you said there. There's no heals or defensive sets or defensive abilities in the game that are going to be as good as making the person attack you go off the offensive. When they have to go on the defensive, that's the strongest. That's the tankiest you'll ever be, right there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I was getting at in that Discord conversation. I was like, no, instead of equipping a defensive set, you need to equip an offensive set. Yep. Like, that's the direction you need to go. That's going to help you stay alive more. That's going to help you take advantage of this, this squishier environment that we're in here. That's the way to take advantage of it.
Yeah. And really that baseline that you just covered, like, that's the necessary piece to be able to take somebody's combos, take somebody's hits, because you still have to live through that. You got to get through that so that you can trade blows. But once you start throwing your offensive kit, back in it, that's where, if you can pull them off the offensive, that's where that tankiness comes in right there.
Yeah. Another super duper important thing for Battlegrounds in particular is situational awareness and positioning. We've talked about this a gajillion times over the past 123 episodes, But it almost doesn't even matter what your build is. If you're really, really good at situational awareness and positioning, you can just walk in there with like Shacklebreaker and Julianos and keep yourself alive, with relative ease, as long as you're like super duper aware of what is happening on the map, where your enemies are, where they're going. I generally, if it's a match with a lot of players that I know are like, okay, these are all good players, I need to be paying attention, I generally don't engage in combat at all unless I know where all 8 enemies are. Mm-hmm. Like, I have accounted for every single one of them with my own eyeballs, or at least I know, okay, that one's dead, he'll be coming up here in a minute. I at least in my mind have an idea of where they all are and what they're all doing. Because the second you try to engage without having that in your mind, you're going to get taken by surprise, especially these good players that they know how to trick you. They know how to make you think something's happening and really it's something else. And
they're wolves out there. They're trying to separate you from the herd.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, you do not want to tunnel vision people. You don't want to chase people and pull yourself out of
Hardest
position.
thing in a BG is don't chase the kill, but it's so true. Don't
Yep.
ever chase the kill.
And one like really simple thing I think is always at least have an idea of where your home base is. Like what direction is home base, like your spawn point, and just generally try to keep your back pointed at that because you know that typically enemies aren't coming from that direction, right? Because that's where your teammates are spawning from. And enemies could come from there, sure, but they're generally not. That's of anywhere to point your back, that would have to be the safest direction. So just try to keep that in mind. And also, just if things go bad, all your teammates die and you have to retreat really fast, you know that that's the direction you have to go. So always just try to put a little mental marker on that spot in your mind and always just kind of mentally tether yourself to it. And then one last piece of advice I would have is find a buddy. Do not go to Stormhaven, but find a buddy that will duel with you, or really, I like to call it sparring.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, even if they're really good duelers, they're very happy to do this. Just tell them, like, hey, don't kill me. Kind of take it easy on me. I'm trying to figure this thing out and practice a little bit. But yeah, let's just kind of spar some and ask them to give you some tips and things like that. There's a lot of stuff that goes into just staying alive in a 1v1 fight that is kind of nuanced and you just kind of have to work it out for yourself. No amount of advice is gonna,
Yeah.
make it click. You just kind of have to have a friend that you can just sort of practice on for a while and figure out those timings. And because you can't be like, it's a lot of it comes down to like keeping up with your buff trackers and timers and all that sort of stuff. And you can't be like keeping up with this 6 second buff and this 10 second buff and this 20 second buff and all that stuff. You kind of, once you've done it so many times, you have an unconscious
Mhm.
idea of those things, and you're just doing it without really thinking about it. It's important to sort of get to that point, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and exactly what you just said, those duels or sparring matches. What we were just talking about above, where you've got to get that baseline to survive a combo, but then you've got to have enough offense to take them on defense. Those are great opportunities to figure that out and learn if your build is accomplishing those two things. Are you putting out enough pressure so that they're not just treating you like a target dummy? Are you surviving? Do you have enough on your build to survive kind of combos? It's very helpful. Very, very helpful.
Also, trying to take advantage of active forms of defense, they tend to be a lot more potent than passive. Like a passive defensive investment would be like the impenetrable trait on your armor, right?
Hmm,
You don't,
hmm.
it doesn't require you to do anything. You just stand there and you take less crit damage. That's it. And it's not a very strong trait, actually. We've been saying for a long time, Impen's not a great trait because it's not very potent. You don't get a lot out of it. Whereas the well-fitted trait, for example, you have 7 well-fitted. Now you have like 35% cost reduction
Yeah.
to your roll dodges. You can just roll dodge all day long and avoid 100% of the damage coming at you.
Oh yeah.
That's just so much more of a potent defensive strategy. But that's active defense. That requires you to push a button and to like have the reaction time to do that. So generally things like that require you to do something like the sturdy trait is another one. It reduces your block cost reduction by a ton. That's active defense. You have to know when to hold that block button. If you can kind of get good at those things, you get a lot more mileage out of those types of defensive investments. Anything else to add to that, Davies?
Nope. Get well fitted. That's what I always do. Roll out of it.
Well fitted. I will say sturdy is just as good.
Mhm.
I think if you just choose your defensive style that you like the best, do you prefer to dodge? Do you prefer to block? They're, I think, equally good. Just kind of depends.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's take a short little break. And we'll finish this thing out. Let's talk about what's been going on here lately. So, let's see. It's update 43. We've had a week of this new PvP situation. I think it's a pretty good patch. Like we were saying earlier, the PvP crowd is pretty happy, pretty active,
Yeah.
it seems. Spirits are high. That undeath nerf is pretty awesome. I mean, people are actually dying in BGs. I haven't really changed my builds all that much,
Yep.
but I'm going in there and I'm certainly racking up the kills. It doesn't really feel any different to me because I already was not a vampire on any of my characters. So for me, it's just kind of like I got buffed all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's just kind of how it feels.
It's good to be on this side of it.
It seems like the first few days I saw a little bit of a rise in necromancers, people like just testing out this new stuff, but it seems like that's already died down. I feel like people are already figuring out that like this doesn't actually really fix the necro problem. It just kind of makes your bar setup a little bit more convenient, but it's like we were saying earlier, they're still in the exact same spot they've always been. You don't really have a good reason to bring them as a solo player or in a group even, really. Like, the one thing they bring to groups is they can have a pretty good, like, AoE damage combo. If
Yeah.
you can take advantage of that, that's fine.
Yep.
But there's no real utility or any other strength that they're bringing. So they rarely make the cut.
Yeah. I think they make more sense as a class overall now. Like they're starting to just have the basic, just like the basic 101, like their abilities and class abilities are like make sense now. But they still need some work to move up on the competitive with the other classes.
At the very least, they need some kinda, like, unique minor buff that they give the group like all the other
Mm-hmm.
classes have. Minimum, something like that.
Yeah. I still go back to, you've said it for I think years now, where like, make them be able to do those debuffs that no other class can do. Make them be able to do a set of debuffs that they can throw out there that they have access to that other classes can't really do. Because I feel like we've got every class kind of has these things. Warden is this kind of buff class. They bring buffs to the table. They can kind of buff a group. Arcanists are very similar in that, but the shielding to the group and things like that. Like make necros that if you're going to be on the group, that your enemies are going to suffer. Your enemies are going to suffer from a buff standpoint. Debuffs all around.
Yeah, I would love them to be, like, super debuff focused.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, but, like, a major feature of this patch so far is, like, Dragon Knights
Yeah.
are kind of on the rise, and it's really just because of that one new set makes them overpowered pretty
It'll be
much.
interesting to see how it's kind of crazy to say one weekend, but it'll be interesting to see how long that set sticks around in its current state. But um,
I think all they need to do is fix that dot so that it can only hit every
yeah,
2 seconds somehow, and then we're
and
good.
surely that's going to come down the road. The fact that you can just
Yeah.
keep re-hitting it seems like maybe an overlook or an oversight a little bit. But I would just say
Yeah,
the
yeah.
overall update, like great patch. And just like I was saying earlier, anytime defense goes down, offense goes up. That's always usually translates to a great patch in PvP and BG specifically.
Yeah, and you can just kinda tell the it's in the air, the PvPers are just kinda hyped right now, and now we're, like, extra hungry for this Q4 update that's coming
Hmm.
up.
Hmm.
Let's see, we also had a Crazy King weekend last weekend, and, I actually had a really good time with it. I remember complaining about Crazy King weekend in the past and being really frustrated with it, but I think I've figured out that, you gotta play with ranged builds on these, like, land grab, like, Crazy King and Domination weekends. I think playing with ranged builds really alleviates a lot of the frustration
This
for me because I was actually having a pretty good time. I was playing with, say what? What were you
I'm
saying?
laughing because this translates to you're like you really gotta this allows you to shoot all the people standing on the flags from all over the map. You
Yeah.
just the people
Yeah,
standing on the
exactly.
flags. You can shoot them. You don't have to run over to that flag. You just shoot them all down. Pick a good spot and just take them all down.
Yeah, and you can still kinda stay somewhat in the vicinity of your team, but you can kinda get away from them a little bit and do a little something. Yeah, it dawned on me because I've been playing with Catface, my ranged MagBlade I've been playing him a lot lately, actually. And I was having a great time, but during that Crazy King weekend, I decided to play a few games with Betsy, the Stamina Templar, and, I was actually getting pretty frustrated because all the stuff that I've talked about in the past with Crazy King weekend about how my teammates only wanna run to flags, they don't wanna fight, so if I wanna fight, I have to leave my teammates behind, and now I'm fighting outnumbered, which means, I'm not really having a great time. So I was running into that, so I jumped back over to Catface, the Nightblade, and for one, he's a Nightblade, he can turn invisible, that helps a lot too,
Mm-hmm.
but he has that range, so I can kinda get away from my team a little bit, but not too far away, and I can still reach these other guys over here and do a little something. He has a ton of damage too, so Yeah, just kind of dawned on me. So I'm kind of developing this strategy, like, okay, Chaos Ball weekend, I'm bringing the Arcanist with Azure Blight and Tarnished Nightmare, and I'm just going to bomb everybody. That's the build I bring for that weekend. For these land grab games, anything with long range, especially something that's mobile, is going to be good. Deathmatch weekend, we can do anything. Doesn't really matter.
That's a good idea to kind of have set builds for the weekends.
Yeah, exactly. I'll have like, okay, yeah, that's right. I need to play these builds for that. I think probably Relic weekend is probably like anything goes. I feel like a lot of things can work for that.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen in a Relic game. Well, it would be crazy if I didn't do one last shout out for the Lord of Leaping himself. I've got to go Lord of Nords. He's still the go-to. Still my
one last go around.
One last Lord of Nords shout out, and just kind of reminder: the build is in the Goon forum, but it's the Oaken Soul Ring, 5-piece Burning Spell Weave, 2-piece Blood Spawn, the BRP dual wield weapon, 1-piece Druid, 1-piece Trainee. It's a great 1-bar build. It's good, very good damage with what we just talked about. It's got good damage that allows it to have good survivability. Kind of what we were talking about, that breakdown you just said. Like it checks all those dots. With the one thing it doesn't have, which with a 1-bar build, you've got to make peace with maybe missing a piece. It doesn't have a snare removal, but it still gets by without that. But very easy play style. Just overall, just a lot of fun build. Just very, very typical DK. And honestly, I would say, like, in this new patch, you could absolutely sub in this new DK set for Burning Spellweave, and you'd be fantastic. That would work fantastic on this build. But yeah, one last shout out to the Lord of Leaping. It's a fantastic build. So much fun. I love the fact that we're seeing more DKs out there. When more DKs are in the wild, I always think it leads to more fun. But I'm a little biased as a DK main, so that absolutely is said tongue in cheek. And I gotta do one last shout out just for Oakensoul. Just for the 1-bar players out there. We know that we don't have that back bar. We know we have to make some sacrifices, but I truly love the 1-bar setup, and I love the theory crafting that it layers in. And I'll just kind of go back to like what you said with that baseline. So much of builds are obviously relate to play style and the situational awareness, but you talked about an important part is just reach that baseline, kind of get that covered, and then really you can kind of go from there. And you can absolutely do that with Oakensoul. You can check all those boxes with an Oakensoul build and really make it work.
Yeah, don't let the naysayers get you down about Oakensoul. It's a totally valid, legitimate way to play. You can make some super killer 1-bar builds. Go back and listen to the last 100 or so episodes of Davey Starjumper right here, talking all about them.
Got to do a shout out for the Oakensoul.
Yeah, shout out to the 1-bar players. But it's a pretty cool concept for a mythic. I'm really glad that it exists. And we not too long ago we were doing a little bit of 1-bar pre-made stuff, and that was super interesting to me because it's like it's a totally different approach to how to make a pre-made, and you really are relying on each other a lot more. It really you really kind of have to cover each other's weaknesses and be a lot more of a team or a lot more of a coordinated unit. But it works, it was working really well. Like, it was actually way better than I expected it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that too, that like when we went through that, I think it really kind of shed, like, it was kind of this nice little shine the light of like, that absolutely could be a viable group team. So
I have no doubt. We only did it a couple of times, but I have no doubt if we stuck with it week after week and had like the same people every time, it would be
there's something there for sure. There's something there for sure. Yeah. But one last shout out to Oakensoul for sure. Such a fun, well balanced mythic. I think I think that's my favorite part about it is it's absolutely not OP, but it's absolutely very viable.
Helena White Streak in the chat says 1-bar gang, we love you too, Starjumper. I don't know if we ever said hello to Forever Night. He came in earlier. I tried to say hello, but then we were talking.
We got a little chat going here.
Welcome to the chat, fellas. Forever Night, Pellinal, want to buy my dog. I got a build I want to talk about. I've been playing, like I said earlier, with Catface Johnson. He is my Khajiit Magicka Nightblade. I've been calling him a MagBlade Jedi. I feel like I'm I'm almost there. I've been pretty much maining this dude. I've made the joke a few times, like, I don't know if I am a Stamplar main anymore. I might be back to being a Nightblade main again, just because I can't get off this guy, man. He's so fun. Same build I've been talking about. It's Soul Cleaver as a double bar set, Oak Father on the front bar with the lightning staff, Master Bow back bar, the Sithis Helm, one piece magma. It's all well fitted. I have 3 Swift on the jewelry. And I think really the magic of the build is his kind of defensive kit. And really this is what I've been saying is overpowered about Nightblades for a long time. They have way too strong of a defensive kit for the power they're packing. Yeah. So defensively, he's a classic Nightblade. He can turn invisible. He's got the 3 Swift. He's ranged. He's well fitted. So super elusive, very impossible to get your hands on. But also, he is not squishy. He has like 33k health. He's got that Sithis Helm. He's got the Phantasmal Escape with that major evasion. Got a really strong healing kit with Vigor and the Healthy Offering. He's got Swallow Soul, his spammable, gives him a really strong heal over time. Siphoning Attacks gives him a really strong heal over time. The Soul Tether Ultimate stuns people, plus gives me a super strong heal based on how many people get tethered there. Just in general, a ton of healing, a ton of like just hardiness and brawliness, but at the same time he can switch into that ranged, elusive, invisible kind of shadow mage. He's kind of got it all covered. So it's like, what if a Templar main made a Nightblade? Is kind of how it is, because he is very flexible like that. Like I'm always talking about how he can really fit in on any team. Is very unlike a typical Nightblade, because he is a team player. But he can also do the lone wolf thing as well. I think that's why I've had a hard time getting off this character, because he's so extremely flexible. If I'm on a team of duds, hey, guess what? I'm a speedy, ranged, invisible Nightblade. So I'm just going to go do my lone wolf thing and have an awesome time. But if I'm on a great team, then I'll be right there in the middle of it with them and supporting them and doing whatever I can do to help the team.
Absolutely.
It's just a great setup.
I think that's the silliest part to me about the current Nightblade setup, is that it's so weird to me that a Nightblade can be such a team player, like that seems so against what the style of that class should be, the sneaky assassin. It's so strange that they can be such a great team heals, team support type of build.
Back when we first started doing this podcast, man, we were like bummed to get Nightblades on our team back
then. How far we've come. Now you need one on the team. It's wild how far we've come.
That's like, heck yeah. Yeah, for real. Totally different situation now. And also kind of like what I was saying with our staying alive segment earlier, part of his defense is he is offensively threatening. He has he's a Nightblade, and that Soul Cleaver set slaps. He's got Merciless Resolve. He will kill you. So do not take him lightly in that regard either.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so speaking of offense, pretty basic. He opens with Venom Arrow on the back bar that gives him the major brutality, plus it activates the Master Bow. Then swap to the front bar and just light attack weave with Swallow Soul until you have your Merciless stacks. And then just stop and be patient and wait for a good opportunity to use that Merciless Resolve. And I think that's something worth like mentioning, especially if you do a lot of PvE and you're a Nightblade and you're used to just firing that Merciless as soon as you have it every single time. You really got to break that habit, just get those stacks built up and then just wait for a good opportunity, and it'll come if you're patient. So once you have your stacks and you're ready to go for the kill, just stun them with Dazing Soul, hit them with the Merciless, and then execute with Impale. Or if you have the ultimate, stun them with the Soul Tether Ultimate, Merciless, and Impale.
You can't live through it. It's too much. Too much at once.
You usually don't. Yeah, sometimes you might have to spam Impale a second time, but yeah, usually that'll kill those people. Also, I will say,
I love that. Sometimes you have to hit a second button for them to fully go down, but that's just an inconvenience.
Yeah. I will say it's good to mix it up sometimes and do the Merciless first and then stun them, because sometimes, or a lot of the time actually, you'll stun them and then they'll dodge out of that stun and you'll miss the Merciless. So just kind of mixing it up to avoid that is good. The Dazing Soul, that's the scribing ability, Wield Soul. I have the Stun, Class Mastery, and Breach scripts on that. And I've said it 1,000 times, but the real secret sauce is that Soul Cleaver set, man. You're just getting so incredibly much value out of it. The set that would be in its place is Wretched Vitality. That's the set I use on everything, and that's the set he used to be using.
Yeah.
And that's a sustain set, and it's a really great sustain set. And what I'm always saying is so great about it is it's giving you so much sustain that you can invest in damage otherwise in your build. Well, if you're set up right, this is giving you as much or more sustain as that. Plus, it is also giving you damage, but it's also giving you healing power. It's also essentially giving you ulti-gen since it's reducing the cost of your main ultimate. It's just like I really don't think any other set in the game offers as much value as this.
How are you still the only one who's out there using this set? How are people still sleeping on this set? It's wild. It's so good.
Yeah. And, like what people have pointed out to me before is like, well, it doesn't apply to your Merciless Resolve, which is your strongest ability. But like, Wretched doesn't either. And this is doing the same thing. It's allowing me to invest in other damage so that Merciless still hits super hard.
Yeah.
This counts as a sustain set that also gives me damage and healing and ulti-gen, and all this stuff.
Absolutely.
So it comes in every weight. It's an Infinite Archives set, so you can tweak it just how you like it. Yeah, so good. So anyway, that's Catface Johnson, and yeah, that's pretty much all I had to talk about. Okay, the emails are going to be a little bit involved. I think I will need one more break before we get into it. It's gonna take
Sure.
Let me do that. I'll be right back. We got a bunch of emails today. It's funny. We had no emails until like 2 days ago, and then we just suddenly got a whole bunch.
And just the explosion.
Yeah, it happened. Scrolling, people realize that, oh crap, it's down to the wire. Better get them in. Scrollingpodcast@gmail.com is our email address. If you'd like to send us emails, we would appreciate it. Ask us any questions, suggestions for the show, say hello, shout out to a friend. Doesn't have to be ESO related, or it can be, doesn't matter. Scrollingpodcast@gmail.com. First one comes from John E. Danger. He says, hey guys, since you have a preview of where console will be in a couple of weeks, I'd like to hear your initial thoughts on some new sets to try out that dropped with Update 43 so us Xboxers can get some prioritization done prior to our incoming patch. Thanks for all the work you do on the pod. It's appreciated. John E. Danger. So yeah, Pyrebrand is really the main
that's
one.
Right.
You want to get your hands on.
Get the DK set. I would say the only other one that I would say that, DK set for sure. Get that one knocked off your list. And then probably I would say the Warden set as well. That's probably the next one I'd say after that.
That was the only other one I had.
I think the Necro set, every set on the fun to actually good scale, the Necro set is very high and probably on the fun scale, but I don't know if it's necessarily very high on the good scale. But
I do think it can be good for a graveyard bombing build. If you're interested in doing something like that, I do think it could be good for that.
Piece it together right. There's probably something there.
Yeah. It would be tricky. It'd be tricky to pull off, but it could be done. But that was my answers too. Yeah, the DK set for sure, and then that Warden set. I've encountered some people using that. It does seem pretty good. So those two there. The others, you could maybe make a build with them or not. Like the Nightblade one seems good, but I don't know if I've really encountered it.
The Sork one for if you need a PvE build, the Sork one seems pretty good for that.
Yeah, for a non-pet PvE build. Thanks for writing, John E. Danger. Next email comes from John E. Danger.
A twofer.
He sent 2 emails. A twofer. He said, go ahead and pick one, but I said, let's just do both. He says, now that the vampire passive is nerfed by 50%, have you found less of a need for Wretched Vitality on your builds? If so, what's been the set you tend to utilize to replace it and enhance your build? Davies, any answers?
I'm going to say definitely you're still using Wretched Vitality. And I'm going to go with this, my guess on this, but you correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the answer to this is that your builds with the Wretched Vitality, you're still using all that sustain. The sustain's still perfect. It's just now they're dying quicker. And so it's just letting you move from, finish this person off and now you're able to move to the next person quicker. So it's only just a buff to your exact same setup with the Wretched Vitality and the sustain.
Yeah, I guess you don't really use Wretched on many builds anyway.
Not nowadays. I've gone full Oaken Soul.
Yeah, so Yeah, like I said earlier, I already was not a vampire on any tunes. Old Betsy was a vamp like a year and a half ago. I did a stint of vampirism, but
She went through a phase.
she went through a phase. She kind of lived it up a little bit. And then I cured it just to see how that felt, and just never went back. The sustain, I just love having that sustain. So yeah, already a no vamp here, and I've already been using Wretched. So yeah, for the builds that do use it, I'm gonna keep using it. Although I do have some non-Wretched setups. My Arcanist, I feel like Arcanists in general don't need it. I have a Dragon Knight build using Dragon's Appetite and Bloodspawn. Between those two, that build doesn't need it either. And that Nightblade build that I just talked about, Soul Cleaver, kind of takes the place of that. So I definitely look for opportunities to not use it, but if it's simply the best choice, I'm not going to fight it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Thanks for writing, John E. Danger. Next email comes from Dudagon. Dudagon says, "What do you think? What do each of you think the E stands for in John E. Danger?" My guess is Eugene.
It's a great guess.
I don't know. What do you think, David? Any
guesses? I'm going to go with Ernest. That's
Ernest.
John
Ernest
Danger.
I'm going to say Emergency.
Ooh.
John Emergency Danger.
John, like it's like the name is like it's a warning.
Or extreme. It's extreme danger. That's got to be it.
Yeah, with and in the signature, the X is written real big. Perfect.
Oh, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here you go, Dudagon. That's your answer. Next email comes from our friend Miss Yusha. Miss Yusha says, "Dear Ket, I would like to have this moment to express how lovely you are. Everyone in PvP appreciates your content on the podcast. It's very informative. All the girls have crushes on you. We all love you. Keep up the good work. Bye."
Well, how about that? There you go, right there.
I mean, I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Hey, all he can do is read the emails, all right? That's all he can do.
That's all I can do. That's
all he can do. Just read the emails. That's what, there you go.
And we had a last minute, just under the wire, weekly Chumpy email. He almost didn't make it, but he just made it. He says, "I really hope this email isn't too late. I had a big change in my work schedule mixed with the scrolling schedule change. It's all gone to shambles. Anyway, my feeble attempt at a question for this week is, how do you find plastic bags versus paper bags or fabric bags? For groceries, of course. Or should there be a better system? By the skin of my teeth, Chumperoo." What do you think, Davey? Is plastic, paper, or do you take your own reusable bags?
Pretty good question here. I will say our household is a reusable bag, but me personally, if I had a choice, I feel like I'm a little old school. I'm a paper bag guy. Give me a paper bag, or real old school. Back in the day, there used to be we used to shop at a place that just had a corner with just a whole bunch of empty boxes. And after you finish your grocery shopping, you would just go over there and grab random boxes and fill your groceries up in the boxes, and then you just take your boxes out. I always like that. You don't see that anymore, but I'm a little old school on this. I like the feel of the paper bag.
I think I like a paper bag, but you go to some. I've been to some grocery stores that have paper bags, but the paper bags don't have handles, so you have to hold it from the bottom.
You have to have the handles. I need some handles on my paper bag.
Yeah, if there's handles, I'm going paper. But yeah, like my local grocery store, they'll give you the paper or plastic option, but the paper does not have handles.
Oh, that's a toughie.
So that's a toughie. I mean, I
paper with handles
because of that. Yeah,
paper with handles. I mean, that's how I live my life right there. I just go. That's a good summary of what's your secret to life, Davius? Paper with handles.
Put that on his tombstone, people. That's the answer, Chumpy. Paper with handles is the way to go. I always like to tell myself that I think I'm going to use the reusable bags, but I just never do. I never think to grab them on my way out. So I kind of gave up on it. I'm a bad person. Scrollingpodcast@gmail.com. Please send us emails. We have a guild. The guild's name is Stoon's Goons. It is literally the best PvP guild in the game. It also just so happens to be the best named guild on the PC NA, Xbox NA, and PlayStation NA servers. We're on all three.
Yep.
It's also the official guild of the Scrollin' Podcast. If you'd like to join, send us an email at scrollinpodcast@gmail.com and we'll send you an invite. If your guild roster is full or if you're on a different platform, that's okay. The Discord is the true home of the guild, and everybody who's on the Discord is a fully fledged goon. So scrollinpodcast@gmail.com to get an invite to the Discord or the guild or both. If you'd like to support the show, the main way to do that is go to patreon.com/scrollinpodcast. You can sign up to receive Stoon's Boon for $3 a month. Get you access to a few things, including the Booncast, which is a shorter solo episode that I do on the off weeks. Also do build spotlight videos and a few other things. If you'd just like to make a one-time donation, you can do that by going to paypal.me/scrollinpodcast. You can donate as little or as much as you like. You can find that link in the description. You can also find it on our website, scrollinpodcast.com. That's another way to support the show. If you just want to spread the word, let people know about the show, that would help us a lot. And the easiest way to do that is just give them that link, scrollinpodcast.com. You can share it on social media or just text it to a friend or, spray paint it on the side of a business of some kind, scrollinpodcast.com.
Absolutely.
Also, if you give us a star rating and especially a written review on the Apple Podcasts app specifically, that helps us out quite a bit. It makes our show appear higher up in search results whenever people search for related terms. And the best thing anybody can do is just join our community. Come join the guild. Come join the Discord, scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. Everything we talk about here on the show has started out as an experience or a conversation or something we've had with our friends in Discord and in the game. So everyone who joins up with the community is directly contributing to the show. Scrollinpodcast@gmail.com once again. Davis, we just started this new thing of you doing all the shout outs. I've kind of been enjoying it. But,
you know me, causing trouble. But yeah, one good last shout out. I'm all aboard on that.
All right, go for it.
So shout out to the chat. Want to buy my dog, Pelin a White Strike for Forever Night. Thank you all so much for being here. Truly, we appreciate it. It makes recording the episode so much more fun when we got people here, interacting with us and commenting. Just a good time. Thank you all so much for being here. Shout outs to just recent people we've been playing with. Uncle Sam, Maddie Quinn, Ironworks, Ricky Bass, Slavka, 60, Knox DeVille, FK, Want to Buy My Dog, Silver, Binks, so many. There's probably more that we're forgetting on that list, but just shout out to everybody who's been hanging out in the Discord, hopping in games, hopping in BGs, hopping in discussions. We always appreciate that. The Discord's that's what makes it go. Is just all those awesome people just interacting and talking and playing together. Shout out to the Elder Goons, the OG, the ones that have been with us this whole time. We always appreciate you all. You guys are a big part of what I was just talking about on that Discord community. We really, really appreciate it. And shout out to the Stoons Boons recipients, the Booner Goons. Thomas, GrizzlyCon, Gummy Bear, Toadster, Pork Body, Taggart, Mother of Dragons, Jim, Sudica, Maxwell, Durpin Stuff, Brewerman, Dudagon, Redheaded Monster, Jumpy, John E. Danger, Joe, FK, and Bulby37. Thank you all so much for the support.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And of course, we got to give one big final shout out, ladies and gentlemen, to Davius Starjumper. Boy, oh boy, what a run it's been, man.
I did it. I got through this, kept it together. Honestly, truly, the only thing that comes to mind is just thank you. Thank you to you, Kit. Thank you to the listeners. Thank you to just everybody, the whole community. From bottom of my heart, thank you to all of you all.
I appreciate it so much, man. It really means so much to me that you've done this with me for so long. You're one of my best friends, and we'll definitely continue to keep up, off the air, certainly.
Oh, for sure. Heck yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's been awesome. So anyway, I guess we're going to call it an episode right there. Thank you all very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.